Hello, everyone. Just logging in here. Sorry for all the misleading links or whatnot, but I'm just gonna wait for everybody to kind of file in. We'll get started. All right, I'm just gonna give it one more minute and then I'll get rolling. All right, let's get started. So, thanks everyone for joining me today. As I had put out on LinkedIn, I I've been in the performance marketing space for 20 years, and I have seen a lot. And one of the things that it just came to me that I really felt like because of my background in contact centers and also working closely with the LeadsCouncil as president and, working with Reach now, I wanted to be able to speak on, I felt like I had an obligation to kind of help our community rally behind some of the uh, this proposed rule change from the FCC. So first, let me just welcome everybody. I turned off the chat feature. I'm by myself here. I don't have anybody help to field questions. So apologies if you wanted to send a chat. It's my first time doing a live stream. So it's good to see everybody. Or I can't see you, but hopefully you can all see me fine. And I hope to see everyone out at LeadsCon for folks that are in the performance marketing space. Um, you know, I I've lived through some experiences in the past with some regulatory, so we'll talk about that in a second. But my goal here today is I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to give any legal interpretation of what is being sent out because I think two of the industry leading TCPA attorneys have already done that. What I do plan on doing is just giving my opinion on some of the products that I think that need some work through these, and then also ones that are probably going to benefit. Some things that we can do as an industry to work through these challenges together as well. And then, like I said, coming up to LeadsCon, I think this will be a big topic that a lot of industry folks are going to want to discuss. So first, what I'm not going to touch on the mobile robo texting or because I think folks in our industry, for the most part, they have been in compliance with that for like I said, the majority of folks that are doing things the right way. What I do want to just spend some time here with you guys with is the NPRM, Notice of Proposed Rulemaking. And really what we'll discuss is it's basically what the FCC is proposing is consent. Now, from what a lot of folks in our space draw conclusion that they have consent is they have language by the submit button on a form, and they link out to a marketing partners list where it may list hundreds of folks that may be able to dial out on that consumer. What FCC is proposing is making that consent even clearer. And in simple terms, you would say, hey, let's just put that right by when a consumer clicks submit, let's just populate who can speak to or who can contact that consumer with that proper consent through automated dialing technology or texting or whatever method that's in that consent language. And so if you look at basically if you look at where we are in that process today, I think a lot of companies have just gone pedal to the metal with the marketing partners list. And when the two attorneys that I'm referencing, by the way, Eric Troutman, who created Reach recently, who I am actually I'm an ambassador, I'm a member, I'm big supporter of Reach. I think I would encourage everybody here to join. We'll talk about that in a minute, as well as LeadsCouncil, Consumer Consent Council, PACE, two organizations, and Michelle Schuster, also, who did a webinar this week. So if you haven't had a chance, listen to Eric and Michelle's webinars, because they were very, very helpful in their interpretation. There's a little variance in there, and it's basically on this consent level. Eric is thinking that a lot of the lead generation companies will need one-to-one consent. But he did say in his webinar that there is room for interpretation. He did say that there's the ability to, we can work on that. Michelle seemed more definitive in her webinar, saying that that was already kind of implied as long as it's clear. And so you're going through a form as a consumer, you're filling out, an application, whether it's a mortgage form, an insurance form, and you click submit, and what the best way from what I've learned is if you can populate the names of the brands that are going to contact that consumer specifically at the point of submit. Although what's happened is over the last couple of years, there's been so many other companies that have built out other revenue monetization events like click walls. So after you click submit, instead of listing the names and populate of who will be contacting you, you would be linked out to a click wall, and then you could choose other brands you want to speak to, and then you get a call. And there's just all these other events. And I think companies in our space have been so focused on not putting the consumer first in that regard, and just basically doing a bunch of different revenue events. And I think that we need to go back to the basics of putting the consumer first. When they click submit, make it clear who's going to contact them. And I think, look, like no regulatory agency, whether it's the FTC or FCC, is going to argue if we're creating a competitive process for a consumer to benefit as a shopper. Look, internet shopping is by far the highest medium of shopping, right? By far. It's not even close. And so that's not going to go away. And where does that all start a lot of times? Google, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. It also comes through affiliate channels and display ads, of course. But there's so much dollars that are being deployed. And we are sometimes jamming a consumer through something that they may not be interested in. And we need to talk about that. We need to come together as a group within performance marketing and be able to deal with that, as a group. And so, if you list the entities out and there's a competitive process, look, when LendingTree started in 1997, what was their slogan? When banks compete, you win. If you go back and you look at that and say, yes, the consumer will benefit, and we have consent with those 4 brands, and we know that the data is not being resold multiple times after that, then we're all in a good spot. I think that's really what we need to make it clear, the consumer, what they're opting in for and who will be contacting them. If they want to click on other brands in that click wall, great. That links out to that company's site. There's clear consent language on that brand's form, or should be, so they can contact them themselves directly. So where's the marketing partner stuff going to hurt today? Well, I think what we all reference as rewards or sweepstakes or co-ride sites, they're going to have to change their paths. Because right now, if you go down, you see, hey, there's a big sweepstake or reward, gift card, whatever it is, you fill out the information, and then you then start getting questions about, auto insurance or Medicare or, home services, whatever it may be, credit card debt. You opt in, but then there's no brand populated at that time. So maybe what those companies can do now is when they're going through those survey sites, when you actually start getting into those opt-in questions, they populate a specific offer for that, if it's Medicare or for insurance, and then they actually capture an opt-in for that brand right on the spot. So it's no longer linking out at the end when they click submit and then everybody free falls. It actually populates a specific offer, or there's a phone number, so that creates an inbound call. There's no outbound. So there's ways that those survey sites or those co-reg sites can still work through this. They need to start thinking through that. Call centers that are calling on age data and trying to introduce a new buyer, those guys are going to, or just even buying real-time data, they're going to have to find a way to work with the lead generation company to enter their specific brand that there is going to be outbounding for, even if it's a registered DBA. I mean, obviously you should contact your attorney and your own interpretation, but call centers that are just generating their own warm transfers are going to have to look at their business process through this. But again, this is the, notice of proposed rulemaking. There's a period where we can comment here as lead buyers, lead sellers, and let the FCC know how important our community and what consumers do benefit from carrying through, whether it's a mortgage or getting their insurance. We have to tell these case studies, these success stories. And so let's talk about that here in a second. But first, I just wanted to also, I want to take us back to the past a little bit, because I've been doing this for 20 years and I've lived through two major milestones where other folks in our industry kind of, I wouldn't say panicked, but just didn't know how things were going to play out. First was the do not call list in 2003. When the do not call list started, it was because obviously people were getting calls in their homes mainly. Remember the old caller ID boxes? And you couldn't stop that. And so simple way under the Bush administration, capture, the ability to put yourself on a do not call list. Well, everybody in the lead gen community didn't know how are they going to be able to, to get consent to call online records. So people put their language in the privacy policy, and then they basically allowed, in the privacy policy, that was kind of like the lead gen community came together and rallied behind that as, a standardized method, and it would create an EBR, 90 days to contact the consumer for that offering. And that seemed to be standardized for a long time, and then obviously the evolution of cell phones, and same thing. You could call the consumer, but that was a big deal when it first came out. I remember, because we at Double Positive were in the call center business, and obviously other folks, and they were worried about how could we call these records. Well, we put them in the privacy policy, and again, you have the 90-day EBR. Fast forward 10 years, and now the mobile provision for the TCPA comes out, and everybody's like, what do we do? It really was a freak out method, because nobody had an idea how they wanted to treat that. And, there was companies like, okay, well, we have to capture consent. It has to be clear. Okay, what font do we use? Do we have it by checkbox? Do we need by the submit button? Can we put it back in the bottom of the page? Can we, all these different discussions. But I will say, after companies tried different things, the industry kind of standardized putting that language by the submit button. Majority of folks didn't do a checkbox. There were still some companies that insisted on it as one extra layer. But that also came about the evolution ultimately of that marketing partners list. It was clear at one point where you click submit, but then companies started putting the brands in the marketing partners list, which had a clear link for the consumer to click on. And then there was Jornai and Trusted Forum that built visual playbacks of the consumer filling out the form. And so I think that was a big moment in time when our industry kind of came together. It standardized that process. People were scared. People didn't know what to do. But there was communication, there was chatter, and then companies were worried that their impressions, their their marketing spends, their conversion rates were going to drop because of that check or that language by the submit button, but it really didn't. It actually, again, it helped unite our community around this process of consent. And pedal to the metal, that's where we kind of went from there. And then in 2015, the FTC had a workshop in DC called Follow Lead. If you look it up on Google, you'll see. And there's some prominent folks within our space that actually there was an open panel and discussion on why the performance marketing and lead gen community were what we were doing and how we were doing. We were being transparent. We were trying to tell the FTC what goes on within the lead generation community. And I feel like that session was productive. And I think maybe we do something similar if the FCC is very open to that in regards to this consent situation, because a lot of it's up for interpretation. And I think right now, as a community, as we go into our big industry trade show, LeadsCon, industry Super Bowl, we need to all rally behind how we can prove to the FCC that we are going to capture consent properly, and we are going to come together around that business process. And if that means getting rid of the marketing partners list, we're going to have to do that. I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but there's going to have to be some rub here from our community to compromise, to at least prove, like I said, if you're going through a long form lead of a mortgage or insurance, and you actually are saying these 4 entities can contact me, that may be the higher ground, right? That may be where we go, where there's a click wall. Again, if you link out to a brand site, they have proper consent, they can dial consumer initiated inbound calls. That's a great way as well. And, driving traffic to your site, that's another method where you can control the consumer experience. It's exclusive to your own lead funnel. And then you can put your own consent language there and capture it. But we need to come together. We need to encourage our clients. We need to encourage lead buyers, the brands. We need you to go into this public comment period and talk about your success within customer acquisition and performance marketing, and what you've done in over the last decade plus of building out customer acquisition through this channel with ethically, compliant and doing good by the consumer, and sharing the success metrics that you've had in working through this channel with online lead generation, taking a lead, putting it through your workflow process, explaining that. Otherwise, the FCC will not. They will look at all the comments coming in from the sellers. They will look at lead generators. They will look at technology partners, service providers, trade organizations. But we need you to go out and comment. And then I also, like I said, encourage. There's 2 groups that I encourage everybody, whether you're a lead buyer, lead seller, inquire more and learn more about. One is LeadsCouncil, consumer consent. That's where I was former president of, and they work directly with the regulatory agencies, as well as the newly found Reach. Eric Troutman's started that up, and I'm a big supporter of both. Eric will also be working directly with regulatory agencies and making sure that specifically that there's standards established between the lead generation community, and that's shared with the and so I think that's so important that we're transparent and we have the ability to work through a lot of this together. That's the common theme here. We have to put the consumer first. If you're looking at all of these situations, when you're looking at a multi-vertical sale through a lead form, is we've all chased a ton of revenue. A lot of folks have been guilty of that in the space of just pushing it too hard. And so you have to look back and say, if you're the consumer and you're going through what's best for the consumer, And are we doing right by the consumer? Are we giving them what they're really asking for? Are we obtaining proper consent? That stuff's going to win. Absolutely. And we need to show that. We need to be transparent about that. And we need to all kind of come together around that. Again, the marketing partners, is a big, wide range of folks that can call, and it may not be where the consumer wants. So I think, again, you got to go back, put yourself in the eye of the consumer, and let's make it clear to them what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, how it's going to happen. All those things need to go into consideration. And we need to be better as a community on innovation. We need to have better innovation. Our industry has been doing the same things over the last couple of years. We're lacking it. I think like the one of the major products that kind of came out that changed the game was a click wall, where consumer could select who they want to speak to, and that was key. And I think here we have to do that. We have to find other ways. And I'm working with a couple companies right now in my consulting business that are already thinking about that are already doing things that are going to change the game. Because the same business process today that's built with a lot of companies in our space in performance marketing, it's not going to work. We have to innovate. We have to work together. There's a lot that's going on within the AI and the chat community, especially like ChatGPT. But we have to work together as a community to innovate, and we cannot just keep working through the same things. We have to prove that we're working to make it easier for the consumer, better for the consumer. And look, shopping's not going to go away. Like I said, online, it's performance marketing is not going to go away. I can assure you that. Lead generation companies aren't going to go away. We're going to have to adapt as a community. And that's my message. So I would say heading into LeadsCon, there's a session with Karen from the FCC. She'll be speaking with Eric Troutman and a couple other folks on a panel. I think it's worth it for if Karen's open to having discussions to come up and speak, introduce yourself to her. Hey, Karen, I'd like to speak to you. And I also think that we need to look at joining these organizations like LeadsCouncil, Consumer Consent, and PACE, and then Reach, because those are really going to make a difference. And you got good people fighting the good fight and trying to unify good business processes and best practices so we can all continue to thrive in performance marketing, do good by the consumer, and all feel good about it. And so I appreciate your time. Thanks for joining me for my first live stream. I hope that this was helpful for you. If you want to reach out to me, I'd love to see you at LeadsCon. I'd love to be able to help, you in your situation, and be able to connect you with either one of those agencies, because they're going to be the associations. They're going to be the ones that are going to help with the FCC and ultimately the FTC as well separately. So thank you so much for attending today, guys. I really appreciate it. Love to everybody. See you soon.